Hey ILA Maya, a senior media analytics mock interview coach for Instacart Measurement Science Manager through practice. This is a mock interview, no real outcome, just rehearsal and feedback. Sound good?
Yes.
Today's mock should take about 45 minutes. I'll give you honest feedback after each answer. That's the point. Ready to start?
Yes. Yes.
Great. To warm up, can you share a brief overview of your recent work in analytics, particularly any measurement or experimentation projects you've led?
Sure. So at Microsoft, I was working for marketing analytics for M365 subscription growth. So I was handling incrementality, attribution, campaign performance, and optimization to drive M365 subscriptions and revenue impact. I also led A/B testing for various landing pages, optimizations, and measured performance to make sure that we improve the M365 subscription growth. So share an example for measurement work or experimentation. I did A/B testing where I tested out two different versions of a landing page. Version A, which had existing structure, and version B, where we improved the landing page and moved the start free subscription at the top of the hero page, at the top in the hero section, and then compare plans table at the top of the section. So based on the results that I noticed, that version B performed comparatively better, and there was 18% incremental impact. So a lot of users landed on that page and took an action and went down the conversion funnel. So that is one of the examples that I did for measurement and experimentation.
Thanks, ILA. Good. You covered key points about your role driving subscription growth and a concrete A B test example showing incrementality impact. The reason that works is you linked the test setup to business results clearly. Let's shift focus. At Mediacom, your resume says you built multi channel attribution frameworks. Can you walk me through your approach to developing those frameworks?
Absolutely. So when I joined my MediaCom, they were looking at the last touch attribution, last touch click only attribution, which wasn't giving the full complete picture of the user journey. So I came with a proposal that we should do a weighted multi-touch attribution model where we would get a better picture of how the customer is behaving in a full customer journey view. So I implemented that multi-touch model with partnering with marketing teams and engineering teams to ensure that we set up. So for weighted multi-touch attribution model, what I did was I implemented the logic where we gave 100% credit to the last touch to the last touch campaign if there was a click in the last 30 days. But if there were no clicks, we would give 45% credit to the last viewed campaign in the last 7 days. So based on that, we were seeing like interesting results for the previous or old model where we were looking at the last click only attribution. We noticed that email contributed only 15% M360, only 15% conversion. When we moved to the new model, we noticed that email contributed 40%. So based on that, we noticed that we should move the budget to email, so increase the budget for email channel by 22%. That eventually increased our conversions as well by 11%. And then later also came to know that for social, we can reduce the spend because that is where we were getting fewer conversion volume. So made some adjustments across channel based on the results we were seeing.
Good ILA. You gave a clear rationale for switching from last touch to weighted multi touch attribution and tied the change to budget reallocation and conversion uplift. The reason that works is because it shows business impact from your analytic framework. How did you validate that your new attribution model was accurately reflecting the customer journey and not over or under crediting particular channels?
Yeah, so for that, I ensured that there was no cannibalization happening, and we are looking at multiple touch points in a user journey. So like where the user, based on like the click and the view, we were able to segregate like if a user would have viewed in a particular channel and then converted through a click from the other channel. So accordingly we gave the weighted attribution credit to that channel, and ensured that we weren't overlapping the channel's performance.
You got part of it. Also consider discussing specific validation methods like comparing model predictions to holdout test data or looking at attribution consistency over time. How did you monitor or adjust for seasonality or external factors that might skew channel attribution in your framework?
Yeah, for seasonality and external factors, definitely calling that out as a caveat when looking at the performance. So there might be um, like competitors running their campaigns at that same time. I ensured that we do not run our campaigns, or we do not prioritize on the goals that might affect our performance because the competitor was running as well. So ensuring that we consider external factors, and like for example for seasonality, we know like in December there is a holiday season, then I would caveat or call that out that for holiday season we definitely see some declines in performance and the conversions rate because everyone is out of office, so there is not much activity going on. So considering those, I also ensured that I do the forecast accordingly so that we have a comparable measurement for those particular months, and we ensure that we are not overestimating or underestimating the performance for a particular month.
Good response, ILA. You showed solid awareness of seasonality and competitor effects, plus practical steps like forecasting adjustments and caveats. The reason that works is you link real world context to analytic interpretation. Let's switch gears. A CPG brand runs sponsored ads on Instacart and wants to know if the campaign drove incremental sales and whether to increase spend. How would you design the measurement approach?
Sure. So for this, what I would suggest is to definitely have an incrementality test framework set up so that we can see if there were true incremental impact happening for the sales or not for the CPG brand. So I would ensure that I talk with the marketing team, connect with the marketing team, and set up this campaign and have a test and a holdout group. So for test, I would expose the users to that particular campaign, and for holdout I would expose that I would suppress the users from that campaign. And based on the standard split, for in my experience I have used 75% into test and 25% in my holdout group. And then based on that I would look at the measurement results and understand if there were any incremental sales made for the test impact for the test group. If not, then the user would have there is no value for running that campaign. So I would dive deeper into understand more like if a campaign isn't performing or the results were not as expected, to see if we can further refine our audience strategy, personalize the creatives, etc. So based on the results, I would be able to make sure that this is an effective campaign and we can increase our spend here. If this is an ineffective campaign, we should further reassess and retest the campaign and then allocate the budget accordingly.
You gave a solid foundation with test and holdout groups and measurement of incremental sales, plus linkage to budget decisions. The reason that works is you outlined a standard incrementality framework clearly with next steps. What unit of randomization would you use in the test and holdout groups, and why?
Can you elaborate this question?
Sure, by unit of randomization. I mean, when you assign users to the test or holdout group, what exactly is your level of random assignment? Is it individual users, households, geographic regions, or something else? And why would
Yeah,
you choose that unit?
yeah. In this case, I would use individual users because I can look at segmentation accordingly, how the characteristics of a particular user is, and then I would segment similar kind of audiences or users in one category. So my unit of randomization would be like user level ID or user level information.
That could be stronger. The main thing to add is why user level randomization avoids contamination or bias, and whether it's practical given campaign delivery constraints. Want to take another shot at explaining why user level randomization is a good choice here?
Yeah, so I believe user level randomization is a good choice here because I want to look at the granular details where of a characteristics of a user. So based on that, I can target the user. So for example, if a user is belonging to a particular market, if the user is actively using the product, if a user has historical engagement with my product, then that would be the kind of user I want to target. And I would similarly bucket these kind of users in one category and the other in my holdout group so that I can see where the performance is.
You got part of it. Also, consider mentioning that user level randomization helps prevent spillover effects between test and control and allows more precise causal inference. Now, about the primary metric for measuring incrementality. What would you choose as the main KPI to evaluate campaign effectiveness here, and why?
So for the CPG brand, it would be ROI impact or ROAS because that is where the major true business impact can be measured for a particular campaign. And based on that, I can see if a campaign is performing effectively or not.
Partial answer. ROI or ROAS is very relevant to campaign value, but also consider mentioning a direct sales metric like incremental sales volume or revenue lift as the primary metric, supported by ROI as a financial summary. How would you define and calculate incrementality for this campaign?
Yeah, sure. So depending on the CVR or the conversion rate, I would look at the differences between the test and the holdout group. So for example, my test group is 6.2% CVR and my holdout group is 5.1% CVR. Then my incremental impact is 18% positive. So I would compare the test and the holdout group and look at the incremental that I have achieved from my test group.
Good, you clearly described comparing conversion rates and calculating the relative lift between test and holdout groups. The reason that works is you tie the incrementality concept directly to measurable user behavior differences. How would you handle if the test group showed no statistically significant lift over the holdout? What would you recommend to your stakeholders?
Yeah, sure. So for in this case where I'm not seeing statistically significant lift over the holdout, I would do some auditing from the data side of things. So for example, looking at control contamination, looking at my sample size, whether it had a statistical power, whether it was significant enough, statistically power enough, and looking at my data and tracking capabilities, whether everything was being tracked correctly. Um, there weren't any tracking or implementation issues on the data side of things, so I would audit those as well and validate that. I would also consider external factors like if there was any channel that was running the same campaign that could have impacted my performance, or any seasonality or external factors that could have affected my performance or competitive performance, for example, that could have led to lower results. So would look into that, and based on that, what I would recommend, if there are no issues with any of this and the validation checks are passed, then I would strategize with my team to understand further like what was the audience strategy, whether we can refine the audiences and have narrowed audience segmentation there, if we can reframe the creative messaging. Also consider looking at the web pages and understanding if there were any issues on the web landing pages, and further optimizations could be made. Look at A/B testing to perform to understand if a user is dropping off at any stage. So do that and then work with my stakeholders to update that.
Good answer, ILA. You covered a thorough diagnostic and how you'd collaborate on next steps, which is key. The reason that works is you show a structured problem solving approach when experiments don't go as planned. Let's dig into validity. What is an A/A test, and why would you run one in an incrementality experiment?
As far as I know, I believe AA test is where you check the statistically significance of your sample size and understand whether the test and the holdout group have significant power in terms of sample size. And this ensures that my incrementality experiment has comparable results for the test and the holdout group, and we are looking at the comparable audience size when we are looking at the results, and there is no cross contamination of the audiences as well.
You got part of it. An A/A test indeed verifies that test and control groups behave similarly before the treatment starts, confirming randomization and data quality. Also consider that A/A tests can detect systemic biases or instrumentation issues before running the real test. If your A/A test shows significant differences between groups, what would you do next?
I would work on ensuring that we fix the two groups and they have similar audiences set up so that there is no issue in the long run.
Good. You identified fixing group balance is key. To get more specific, how would you detect and address sample ratio mismatch SRM issues if they appear in your experiment?
So for sample ratios issues, I would work with the engineering team to understand like how we can update our sample audience or sample size for the audience and ensure that is fixed before we run the actual experiment.
That could be strong copy. The main thing to add is how you detect SRM using statistical tests comparing observed group sizes to expected ratios, and how you troubleshoot potential causes like randomization flaws or logging errors. Want to take another shot describing how to detect and handle SRM in your experiment?
Yeah, sure. So I can detect SRM using statistical tests, comparing my observed group sizes to expected ratios, and then look at like randomization flaws or any logging errors, and then ensuring that we fix that before we actually run the experiment.
Good, that's clearer and more specific. You named the right detection method and key troubleshooting steps. The reason that works is you show both analytical and operational understanding of SRM. Let's shift to technical execution. At Microsoft, what analytics tools and programming languages did you use for experiment data pulls, analysis, and visualization? Stopping here to let candidate answer.
Yeah, so at Microsoft, the most widely used tools were Power BI for visualization, for pulling the data and any kind of ETL work, I leverage SQL. And then for analysis, I leverage my dashboard for the most part to understand at various granularity, leveraging various filters to understand what's working and what's not, and looking at trends, patterns, etc.
Partial answer. You mentioned Power BI and SQL well, but also consider adding Python or R for deeper experiment analysis, reproducibility, and automation. How do you ensure your analysis and dashboards are reliable and can be trusted by stakeholders?
Yeah, so there are a lot of validation checks that go into the dashboard validation, or like checking, ensuring that my dashboards are accurate and reflecting the right performance. So in the backend, we have scripts where I ensure that my source data and my dashboard data is 1:1 match. If there are any issues, then it would send me or flag me that the data looks inaccurate, or like it shows a red exclamation mark where I would go and look if the data has any issues. So for example, if I'm seeing my trend drop significantly in the dashboard, I would dive deeper and understand um, whether my validation is performing well. So if my validation is performing well and I QA back with my data source, and that also looks like that the trend declined there, then that's coming from the source itself. In that case, I would try to understand other metrics like tagging problem or implementation problem that would have led to that impact at the first place. So from the source itself. So if there were like any website issues, that means a tracking issue, then that could have led to lower performance. So I would investigate deeper to understand like the main issue.
Good. You covered strong data validation checks, automated alerts, and root cause analysis to maintain dashboard trust. The reason that works is it shows a thorough approach to data quality and stakeholder confidence. Now, imagine you need to present the incrementality test results and recommendations to a senior CPG advertiser in 2 minutes. How would you structure that conversation?
Yeah, so for in this case, I would call out the main key level insight as an executive summary or an executive headline, where I would, for example, showcase that in case of like a geo test, for example, I want to call out that a particular market performed well. So, for example, the top six market drove 12% conversions, but results were flat across US and the rest of the world as my main headline. And then I would add 2 to 3 data supporting points at a higher level to showcase my or back up my headline. And then I would keep the deeper level data or complex data analysis handy so that if the executive team or senior advertiser asks me for more data, so I can share that. And then I would showcase some of the solid points as well.
Good summary approach, ILA. You included a clear headline, data backed support, and readiness to dive deeper if asked. The reason that works is it respects stakeholders' time and curiosity. What recommendation would you make to the advertiser based on an incrementality result that shows a 12% lift in conversions in select markets, but flat results overall?
Yeah, sure. So as a recommendation, also I would have two or three bullets in there. So for example, a particular market that did well, I would suggest suggest expanding or phasing or rolling out that to the audiences or to the audiences where we are seeing good performance, and then further understanding like placements where it is performing low or audience where it is performing low to kind of suppress that audience or exclude that audience and further optimize that campaign. But for flat results, I would look deeper with my marketing team to understand for audiences, for example, if we can refine the audiences further, uh, and look at creative strategy, if we can update the messaging, the call to action, to ensure that we are making that kind of changes, test out the landing pages, and then based on those updates, I would restructure my strategy and the campaign, and then rerun the campaign where I'm seeing like flat results overall.
Good, you gave actionable recommendations with both scaling wins and diagnosing flat areas. The reason that works is providing clear next steps tailored to results shows strategic thinking. If you saw spillover effects where the holdout group was partially exposed to campaign ads, how would that impact your incrementality measurement, and what would you do to address it?
Yeah, I think then the results are not very reliable because if it was partially exposed and there were like a spillover effects, that those results need to be reconsidered. Then I would ensure that we fix that with the help of like looking into audiences and ensuring that the test and the holdout group does not have any contamination, and then rerun the test to understand better results and make sure that we have a particular statistical significance, and then there is a particular confidence range that helps me identify that these are like reliable results.
That's on the right track. ILA. Can you think of specific experimental design choices or analysis techniques that could help minimize or adjust for spillover if you can't fully prevent it?
For in my case, I think from design standpoint, I can leverage audience suppression as one of the techniques to ensure that there is no spillover.
Good. Audience suppression is a solid design choice to reduce spillover. You might also consider geographic or household level holdouts to contain spillover or modeling approaches that adjust lift estimates accounting for contamination. Let's pivot to strategy. How would you partner with sales and cross functional teams to identify upsell opportunities based on measurement insights?
So I would partner with my sales team and cross-functional teams to understand like which channels specifically are seeing good performance and where, like which channels specifically have audience that could be the right targeting audience for us, and those are likely to convert into our or upgrade or yeah, convert into upsell opportunities. So, for example, I have my in product campaign where I want my user to go from M365 basic subscription to M365 personal subscription. Then I would identify these users and then look at only the audiences that have like high engagement activity, frequent file activity, those who visit the upgrade landing page, or those are using OneDrive storage benefits and like premium adjacent features. And then that would be my audience where I see like a lot of upsell opportunities. So I would partner with my cross-functional team to design a campaign around those audiences and target them for my upgrade opportunity. And then with sales to understand like LTV impact of how much LTV value, to understand how much ROI or ROAS these audiences can drive for my particular product.
Good ILA. You demonstrated practical cross team collaboration and audience segmentation to drive upsell. The reason that works is linking measurement insights to concrete sales and marketing actions. For your last question, looking back at this session, how do you feel about your performance so far? Any areas you want feedback on or to focus more?
Yes, so I want to focus on unit of randomization, AA test, and sample ratio mismatch.
Solid on your overall explanation so far. The area to tighten is giving more detail on the technical rationale and specific methods for unit of randomization, A/A tests, and sample ratio mismatch. Next time, try structuring these answers by first defining the concept precisely, then explaining why it matters, and finishing with concrete examples or steps you took. Want me to give you some targeted practice tasks on those topics?
Yes.
Great. For unit of randomization, a good practice task is to draft a pros and cons list comparing user level versus household level versus geographic level randomization for an incrementality test. For A/A tests, try designing a short plan outlining how you would run an A/A test to validate randomization and data quality before a major experiment. And for sample ratio mismatch, practice writing out a troubleshooting checklist that includes how to detect SRM statistically, common root causes, and fixes. These will help you answer those questions more confidently in your next mock. Sound doable?
Yes.
Awesome, ILA. Wrapping up. Today you showed solid business impact storytelling with your Microsoft attribution and experimentation examples. And you approached the CPG incrementality case clearly with test/holdout and metric discussion. For growth, focus on sharpening your experimental design language around randomization units, A/A tests, and detecting sample ratio mismatch by grounding those with specific definitions and troubleshooting steps, plus weave in some technical detail. 3 next step tips. 1. Practice structuring technical explanations to define concept apply. 2. Drill on experiment